What's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another player interview. This time I am joined by my good buddy Nick Morris. What's going on, Nick?
Hello.
So Nick is one of my local players. At least used to be a little more local. Now he plays a lot in Rhode Island. I play a little bit more in the Boston area. But he was one of the first people I met when I started playing competitive card games about like five-ish years ago. And we've just been pretty tight ever since. So I'm glad to be having him on the channel. He did a really awesome thing this weekend at the AC Regional on Saturday. What'd you do, Nick?
I got 4th on day 1 with Mono Blue Soul Striker.
The freaking fan favorite leader, man. I love Soul Striker so much. Like, anyone who's followed the channel will know that, and I'm super duper stoked that that you got 4th with a leader. So we're gonna go through his deck profile. We're gonna go through like some of his card choices and his side deck, and we'll ask about some different matchups. So first things first, what made you want to go with Soul Striker?
I felt like with Super Saiyan 3 temporarily banned, that the format kind of busted open where really you could play anything that you really wanted to, at least at first, because everyone was trying to figure out what the format was going to be. And I'm inherently a control player, so playing a deck like this with a very, very strong defensive package allowed me to actually compete. And I've been testing this deck. I mean, I came right off the Super Saiyan 3 lists and then right to this one, or at least variations of this as I was testing. So
this took some inspiration from like Mono Blue SS3?
Yeah, like the Mono Blue SS3, I was working on a blue-yellow one that was more mid-rangey because I prefer playing the big bodies because Barrier is just too strong right now. Really, Zeno's the only out to this that actually gets rid of the barrier cards for you. So
when you're talking about barrier cards that are kind of an issue, what barrier cards are you specifically referring to?
Vegito is a problem for most decks, especially against Storm. Once you get Vegito on board, if you can protect that Vegito, you're at least blocking one hit with that, and a hit that's a big hit because they're dumping their hand to try and kill it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty insane that it's basically as good as a bean on your leader, but also a separate battle card they have to kill. Awesome. So yeah, I mean, I love the Soul Striker pick, and it's been doing pretty well consistently at different regionals. I know Blue Green's done some stuff, Blue Red's done some stuff, but this is the first Mono Blue that I've seen get top 4. So once again, congratulations. It's super awesome. So I know me and you personally talked about this a little bit, but I want the people to know, why did you go with Chrono in the main board except for over Boo?
So originally I was actually main decking for Boo. And the Boo was fine. Not very often did I end up charging it because usually I only ended up seeing one. And I was looking at my side deck, and I saw the Chrono was there, and I'm like, you know what? Chrono really does the same thing. And I kind of, one of my fears for going into this event was Jackie Chun, because I have to waste a negate on a Jackie Chun swing on my Vegito to save it. Or on my Dragon Fist. So I was like, you know what? I'm a main deck Chronoa and cut the Boo because I want to free up some side deck space to kind of put her onto other decks that were going to give me a problem, as well as onto Jackie Chun, so that I don't mind using the gates on him if I have outs to other things.
And I don't think it would become too much of a problem with the way the deck list looks. But did you ever run into a problem charging blues, or not so much?
I do every once in a while, especially playing 3 Overwhelm targets and then the Chronoas. So sometimes I would get a black loaded hand, and then I would just have to charge something I really don't want to. But it doesn't matter as much because this deck, it kind of slow rolls your opponent anyway. So it's not like Storm where you have to charge the blue and you have to charge the yellow and then you kill your opponent. I have time. 1 extra energy is not going to make too much of a difference as it hits late game, where I'm going to have, 5-6 blue energy and then the 1 black if it's the worst case scenario. Makes
sense. Yeah, just like charging off color, and SS3 only on Soul Striker only untaps 2 blue anyway, so you can just use that to pay for your colorless costs. So that makes sense. The 2 Supreme Kai Lights Guide. I like this card a lot. It's cool because it allows Soul Striker to swing for 25k. How did it perform for you all weekend?
I actually really liked it a lot. It was good in the earlier matchups. So when I faced off against the another Soul Striker deck, I faced off against an Oob deck. It worked perfectly fine. But ultimately, I ended up getting sided out for Scientist Fu in the later matchups. In games that were going to go long, but I needed hand advantage fast. Well, this card's great because I can flute it back. So it's basically I'm playing more Overwhelm. It's a 5k combo. and it turns my leader into a swinging threat onto anything else. So even swinging at a Kefla, now I don't have to combo anything. I have to make you waste a card to swing it, or to save it.
Totally, yeah, absolutely. How do you feel about the one mass sand in the main board? I'm not too much of a believer of one-ofs in this game unless they're like searchable or unless you're playing Hercule. So how'd you feel about the one mass sand?
This mass sand showed up in so many opening hands, even as a one-of.
Nice.
It made me want to cut it, but then I realized that a lot of the matchups when you're facing off against decks that have like a lot of one drops, so things like Announcer and Hercule, if they screw up and leave them on board, you're just ripping away their field, especially if they're going to aggro you to Awakening anyways.
Yep.
The Lights Guide is really just there as a early turn. Okay, I'm gonna play this as an Overwhelm. Once I resolve an objection, maybe combo once or twice, and then I'm good to go.
Totally, yeah. I mean, I think Matt Sand's a great meta call, especially with like all the Announcer one drops floating around and like Chaozu Krillin. Even though it can't clear Chaozu's, but it can clear Krillin's. I think it's a pretty good meta call for sure. Then the one flute, absolutely busted. For Awakening Talent Pan, I'm noticing no Tapion in the main deck. So why didn't you choose to play Tapion, and why only the 4 Pans? Can you talk about that a little bit?
So I really did not like Tapion. When I actually was helping a friend of mine building the same deck, and we were kind of bouncing ideas off of each other, and he was like, "Oh, I'm going to main deck Tapion." I'm like, Tapion was really good for SS3 because it was a 1 card you're awakened.
Right.
But the issue with this deck is my turn 3 in a perfect world is I'm at 4 energy because of Objection. So playing a 3-drop that is an Overwhelm kind of hinders that a little bit, because now I'm like, do I want to play the Yajirobe? The Tapion, or do I want to play resolve the Objection? And I have a better card, which is At All Costs Vegeta, that does a similar thing where I rip the 2 life. So technically there were games where I actually played At All Costs Vegeta because I didn't see a Pan, and use that to self-awaken.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think Pan's really good, especially it proved to be really good in like Announcer decks and Hercule decks all weekend. But a lot of people thought it was weird because it doesn't have double strike, so it's not as pressuring as Kava, and it doesn't have crit. So you're basically just giving your opponent a card when you're getting a card. But the fact that it flutes itself and it protects your awakening play is really cool, because once you play Tapion, if it doesn't awaken you, it just sits there and doesn't do anything. Once you play a Kava and you take a life, it just sits there in rest mode. So I really like how Pan can put herself back to hand, and then once you awaken, she's just blue energy. Yeah,
that's the thing with Pan, is she's the psychological, like, okay, I have Pan, I'm going to be awakening, so the actual aggro for you, and then I'm like, okay, I guess I'll just charge the Pan then.
Oh yeah.
Like, just knowing that she's there, at least as the one-of, they're like, I can't suffocate you, I can't leave you at the 5 life like a lot of people want to.
Yep.
And then try and double strike it down. They're gonna bring me to awakening, and then Pan is like, okay, I'll charge it or I'll combo with it, and that's why I like it as a card. I think the card's fantastic.
Yeah.
I had no issues with it all weekend. Even when I draw it in spades, I was like, okay, cool, it's a combo fodder and I can charge it. Even after I'm awakening, there were even times where I was at 4 life and I used it just to get another body to bring them down within double strike range or go for game out of nowhere. So stuff like that. So the card performed extraordinarily well.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when Soul Striker on the backside's untapping too, and you get to get that one more sneaky attack in there. Absolutely. So we got the 4 Whis and the 4 Bean, very, very, very standard. Why the 3 Yajirobe in the main board?
So I actually was expecting a lot more Storm this weekend. So when I was thinking about deck building, I'm like, okay, I need a turn 2 play that in case I don't get Objection, or more options to play. So especially as it hits late game, when I'm dropping Dragon Fist, I'm untapping 2 energy, my leader untaps 2, and I just have a lot of energy to spare, but I never want to tap out.
Yep.
So this is a card that I can place on board that is a threat, because everyone's main decking Mass Saiyan. So just him being on board kind of makes sure my opponent think, what do I want to swing with? What do I want to bait out? And if I get bad ringed, which I was in my 1 Storm matchup, I was expecting the entire matchup. I'm like, I'm about to get bad ring. I would keep him on board, specifically for if I get bad ring, because I can play the Wii Scourge, they bad ring me, and I go, okay, block with the Yajirobe.
Yeah, absolutely.
For a lot of their bigger hits. It killed a lot of apes.
Yeah, battering is very scary, especially if you're playing blue and like you're trying to abuse coercions and beans on one energy. But if you get that one energy Whis battering, it taps you out. But at least having the Yajirobe, you can then go to your blocker step and activate the Yajirobe. In case anyone didn't know that, you can do that, which is really, really solid. And I like how the usefulness of Yajirobe increased a lot when Flute went to 1, because at first everyone was like, oh, revenge, like when Storm first came out, everyone was like, oh, revenge blockers answer Goten and Bardock and Trunks and Cabo really easily. But the issue was your opponent would just flute your blockers back to hand and go for game. But now that Flute's at 1, they're a lot more viable, which I really like.
Yeah, no one's going to be using it on a Yajirobe. Everyone's going to be using it on their own Goten or whatever just to get that +2.
Absolutely. So, yeah, 110%. So Boost Tech Piccolo, did you ever consider playing the Kibito Kai or some type of split?
I do not like the Kibito Kai. I feel like with how defensive this deck is, Kibito Kai in theory should be fine. But I like to be able to see more cards even on defense. Because when I'm protecting the Vegito, I want to see what my next play is going to be. Because there are times where I'll have Vegito on board in rest, and I'll have like multiple of the Unbreakables and boost attacks with no next turn plays. So I don't mind using one to try and dig for a next turn play where people are going to be comboing sometimes 2 cards just to try and get over Vegito or bait me to be using stuff. So with how defensive the deck is, I felt like Kibito Kai wasn't really needed.
Makes sense. Then we have the 3 objections. So did you ever feel like this card was making your hand go too low, or was it was just like that wasn't really an issue?
Actually, it wasn't an issue. So because we're playing a leader that has 8 life and there's really not a lot of crit roaming around, I would get hit and then I would take the cards anyways. I actually sided in whenever I went second. I would side in the 4th objection. That's how good objection was.
Oh wow.
Because a lot of my matchups towards the later half of the day were all Hercule, which hand size does matter, but having more energy matters in the long run because I need to play my win conditions like Dragon Fist, Beerus before they can play Demigra.
Yeah.
So getting to that objection was a lot more. Heck, there were times where I was like, I wish I just main decked 4, because there were times where I just really wanted to see it. And having a dead card is bad when you're trying to survive, but if you can make it to the next turn, you have a snap energy to use.
We talked about that too. We were like, oh yeah, if I open 3 objections, I'm keeping all 3 because you're just going to charge one and then charge the next one and then play the next one. So and then you don't dead draw them later. So that's actually pretty funny. But yeah, so how did the games, like, it makes sense you need objection because you're playing a lot of high drops. How did the games go for you where like you just couldn't see objection in time? Were those like a struggle or what?
Yeah, they ended up being a little more of a struggle. Just because, especially if I lost a die roll where I'm in energy behind, and no one else was playing objection, so I never felt like, oh, they're gonna be 2 energy ahead of me. It was always just the 1. But when I went first and resolved objection, a lot of times that was enough to make the game like basically turn in my favor heavily, because now I'm playing with 3 while they're playing at 1 at times. So.
For sure, yeah, absolutely. No, it makes a lot more sense. Like I have like PTSD with objection because I played it at ARG Worcester. I played a Soul Striker green-blue objection deck, and it just like, I don't know, it cost me a lot of games because it was so neg. But I mean, in this format, like there's a lot less crit than that format, so that point makes a whole lot of sense. I like that a lot. Then we have the 4 Raging Spirits on Gohan standard. The 4 Vegito, super good. I played Hercule the past weekend, and like. I didn't play against any Vegito decks, luckily, but Vegito is actually one of the things that I feel like the deck does struggle a little bit to get past. So yeah, definitely a really good card in the format for sure. How did it feel like? So Vegito's a card you want to drop against Storm because it prevents them from really putting a lot of pressure on your leader, and an objection helps you get there. But did it ever feel like Vegito like was a little bit like too little, too late, or is it just like the perfect turn 3 play?
Whenever I didn't get objection, it was a little too late, because the issue with Vegito is I try and play Vegito depending on the matchup. If it's just against an aggro matchup, you play him as soon as you can, right when that 4 energy hits. You're like, I'm dropping Vegito because your leader can untap the energy. You kind of have the safety net. But there are plenty of times where I will actually wait a turn, especially if it's not as aggressive as a matchup, where I'll wait a turn, play and I'll at all costs Vegeta instead, because I want to hit that 5 energy to make Vegito inherently a +1. You know what I mean? Get that extra draw in because I'm going to need as much defense because people are going to be gunning to kill that thing.
Yep.
But if they can't kill it, I pretty much win because I have no problem dumping my hand to protect it. The only time I won't is if I know it's like one of the last couple attacks in the turn and I know they can't kill me and I have a second one in hand.
Oh yeah, totally, and that's not even worth to save it, and especially if it's going to make you neg particularly hard. Okay, and then we have the Vegito, then we have the at all cost Vegeta. So my personal opinion on this card, I really don't like the card in any deck that's not playing yellow, because it's like a big boss monster, triple strike finisher, yeah, but like it loses to a negate. So I mean, how did you feel about it all weekend? How much work did it put in for you?
It put in actually a lot of work this weekend. Because it's another self-awakening target that I can play. He kind of popped up quite a bit, especially on the slower matchups if I didn't see Pan. But the other thing with him is that he is kind of out of nowhere. So he allows you to play, kind of like Dragon Fist, he allows you to play multiple threats. So I've had turns where I'll have a Dragon Fist on board, and I'll play like 3 threats throughout the turn because this guy just untapping that 1 energy really makes the difference when you're at the higher energy costs.
Right.
And I actually closed out one of my Hercule games because he completely forgot about this card. He tapped out and he had and I had 4 energy exact, and I windmill slammed him down, used his ability, went down the 2, and then swung for a triple strike game. So he kind of comes out of nowhere. But the biggest thing is that if I don't have a Vegito, and say I'm not awakened, or even if I am awakened, he is a great turn 3 play if I resolved Objection.
Yep.
Because then I can wait till the next turn to play Vegito, and it's just kind of a threat on board. The only times he was not good was during the Hercule matchups when I knew they were going to be able to oob it, so I usually just charged the guy.
Right.
But in any other matchups, like I didn't really face like any rogue. But if I were to face rogue, this guy has performed very well, at least at the local level, just being able to get that +1 draw. You know, if I get Zenode, which I thankfully didn't get at all weekend, he's just great. Okay, I'm going to play him, untap an energy. Now I'm working with, instead of the 2 energy for my leader swing, I'm working with 3 energy for the turn. As the later the game goes on, he actually matters more and more.
Totally. Yeah. And next up we have the Vegeta Prince of Speed. I really like the card a lot. It's almost like a similar play to Beerus in terms of like Beerus might make your opponent neg 2 or 3, but Vegeta pluses you 2. So why did you decide to include Prince of Speed instead of like more Dragon Fists or more Beeruses?
Because the issue with this Princess, the good thing about the Prince of Speed is, like you said, he gets me a +2. Playing a defensive deck, I need as big of a hand as possible to defend. And he is basically gets me a body on board to just put a little bit of pressure, because he's going to make my opponent -1 card usually anyways, whether I'm swinging at a battle card with him or if I'm swinging at leader and they negate, or they just do the 1 combo. I very rarely do I ever even combo on attacking, but he gives me the extra cards to work with in matchups where Beerus is not so strong, because Beerus only really works in like Hercule and like announcer style matchups where they play a lot of 1-drops and they either have to get rid of a finisher or they have to get rid of a bunch of 1-drops.
Yeah.
But Vegeta allows me to replenish my hand to protect the Vegito. And if he dies afterwards, I'm like, that's perfectly fine, because he ended up taking a hit for something, whether it be a swing or whatever, and he got me 2 cards that allows me to kind of plan out my next 2 turns or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. When a battle card replaces itself and then some, it's not a huge deal if it leaves the board. You think you would keep it at 2 or increase it going forward?
I think 2 is fine. The good thing about this deck is it's very toolboxy, so I want to have as many answers in the deck as possible, and he's just an answer to decks that rip my hand apart, as well as just being able to give me extra defenses to work with.
And then we kind of already touched on Beerus, just for breaking apart things like Announcer and Hercule. So what was the main focus of Dragon Fist? Like, why did you decide to include that? What did you want to answer? I think Vegito is the main one, right? But what else?
Honestly, Dragon Fist had 2 jobs. It was one, it gave me an extender, so when I do play him, I very rarely do I even bounce anything back unless it's a card that I know won't get them anything. Or it's like a Vegito when I face a mirror match. He's just there to basically be another 2 restand of energy. and get rid of issues if I need them. Him on board, like when you play him, you are now saying that you are going to be able to kind of play 2 threats per turn as opposed to just 1. Because of how many high drops I play, and you start getting to those later turns, you get more and more energy to work with. He allows you to really play that 2 threats per turn, playing it at all cost Vegeta, or playing it like there was a game where I was facing somebody and I had 2 Dragon Fists on board. I was able to play and resolve 2 Beeruses in that one turn.
Wow.
And a Scientist Fu because my leader swing and this guy untapping 6 energy total.
Wow, that's pretty nutty. So what typically what energy would you stop charging at? Like 6 energy, 7 energy?
6 is where I normally stop unless I draw an objection. If I draw an objection, I just kind of slam it into the energy because there's really no point in keeping it in hand. I don't have any like discard fodder stuff, like cards that force me to discard.
For sure, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So then we have the 4 unbreakables. So if I count it up, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, I'm just counting up the 10Ks. 7, 9, 11, and 15 10Ks, and then 4 uncomboables. Did that number ever kind of hinder you in any way? Like, did you ever find you had just way too many 10Ks?
Not overly. Because Senzu Bean is a card, and I felt pretty content with just swinging with my leader and then not even playing any more cards and just leaving it at 2, maybe even 3 energy, depending on what I played the turn before. So I always had energy to work with. Very rarely was I ever even tapped out, unless it was super early game before I awakened, where I don't mind tapping out as much because they have to go through 8 life to kill me.
Did you ever consider playing Xenobutton in a deck?
I actually didn't, so I didn't know the spice of Xenobutton until it was a little too late. Even then, looking back on it now, I didn't feel like this deck really needed it. I don't have a super big hand with this deck. After I awaken, I end up maintaining a decent size, but it's never enough to waste a Xenobutton for. And I always had things untapped anyways. So I never felt like, okay, I needed to untap everything because it's going to minus me a card ultimately.
Makes sense.
And it's going to be another card I can't combo with.
100%. And then I had one more question about charging up to 6 energy. So I don't know if you ever played against Announcer. I don't know if you ever played against Hercule that was main decking the World Tournament Secret Rare. But if you did and you were kind of afraid of that card, was it like hindering you to not charge up to 6 energy in terms of you didn't want to get that thing dropped on you and burned for game? You know what I mean?
Oh, I still charge 2. Very rarely did I get lower than 4 life when I had like once I hit 4 life and Vegito comes on board. Because I'm playing so defensively and protecting that Vegito, very rarely did I even drop. I actually had a match where someone dropped that secret rare on me, my first Hercule match. He dropped that secret rare on me. Ripped the 2 energy, ripped the 2 life. I was still at 2. I negated both the attacks, and I had Dragon Fist on board already.
Yep.
He passed turn. I charged up to 5, and I'm like, I don't need the charge anymore. I'm like, I already have Dragon Fist. Like, as long as Dragon Fist on board, I basically are working with 2 more energy. I just returned it back to his hand, and he was like, oh, wait, I can't play this anymore unless you charge up to 6.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, especially if you have a double negate. I actually won a game like that, being able to double negate the World Tournament Secret Rare as well. So yeah. All right, so we'll move over to the side deck now. So 3 Haru, absolutely insane against like green and yellow decks. Did you have a lot of green-yellow matchups or not so much?
I had 1.
1?
I faced my one loss for the event because I went 6-1-1. My one loss was against a friend of mine playing Victory Strike.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty rough, especially if they hit double objection on you before you can like start to make your plays.
Yeah, that was the big thing.
Then we had the second Mass Sand, just for more board removal, more board clear. The 2 Scientist Fu, was that mostly just for Cell Chain?
Cell Chain, I actually sided in for all the Hercule matches because I knew I was going to be, towards the later half of the game, I was going to be comboing a lot to keep the Vegito alive. And with that matchup, I need to not match their hand size, but I need to get bigger bodies on board when I'm swinging and get those 2 draws. They actually mattered a lot with those matchups.
Got you. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've heard Scientist Fu referred to a lot as a card that's like either you main deck or you don't play it, but I totally agree with it in the sideboard, especially for when Cell Chain is pretty prevalent. I played against 3 Cell Chains all weekend, so I definitely agree with the Scientist Fu decision. How much work did Pilaf put in against Storm this weekend?
It won me a game.
Nice. What was the situation?
So the thing with Pilaf is that he is not good late game. He is only good early game, but what he allows you to do, because the way the matchup is, like I keep on saying, you're playing a leader that is at 8 life and doesn't mind staying at 8 life for a while. It against Storm, they're gonna bring you down anyways. Pilaf was a card where I lost the die roll game going, and then we went game 2. I won game 1, and I charged 1 energy and I passed. And it turns a bad hand or an okay hand for a Storm player into a unplayable game, because he charges the yellow, he summons the Bardock, he swings, and I go Emperor Pilaf, and he removing that swap ability made it so he couldn't get even more value off the Bardock and going into a go 10. He ended up just passing turn after that, giving me that extra turn, allowing me to resolve Objection, gets me 3 energy to work with, or close to 3 energy to work with going into the next turn, which gave me more survivability. This deck is a defensive deck. I built it to be defensive. It's against Storm is its hardest matchup because it can put you in a bad spot before your defenses are up.
Right.
Emperor Pilaf just allows me to even just getting to 1 more turn. Now if he had an amazing hand, Pilaf would have not been good.
Right.
But because he had kind of probably a Bardock and a go 10 play, and that was about it, and he was going to dig for what else he needed, it really stunted his turn, gave me that extra turn to work with going forward.
Absolutely. And then we had the 4th, Create a Target Yajirobe, I'm sure for similar matchups. You talked about already when deciding in the 4th Objection, especially going second in certain matchups to get back ahead on energy. Double Mafuba, what did this come in against?
So I sided in for Victory Strike, even though the bad ring is definitely going to be there. You still need the play and out, in case they don't have the bad ring. I also used it against the Hercule matchup, because it's just another negate to utilize. So when they're going to be trying to go for game, playing the big drop Mira or playing Demigra, the Mafuba allows me to kind of stunt them. They'll still resolve any autos, but it allows me to kind of really block that attack because I'm playing so defensively. Blue really only has one really good negate right now, and that's Coercion. Mafuba is a good negate, but it's not a great one because it has the issue of costing 2.
Yep.
So in most decks, you can't do that. With this deck, you can.
Absolutely. Then the 1 Beerus and the 1 more Dragon Fist, just when you need like another big finisher, right?
Yeah, just for fixing ratio. So in the Hercule matchup, when I know the game is going to go longer, I'll side those guys and side out the Yajirobes because they don't really work against Hercule.
Yeah.
And it just gives me more of a chance to see my outs to a lot like the big like Demigra or secret rare threats. Allows me to just see more outs for it so I can play it.
So what did you play against a lot this weekend? I know you played against Hercule. I know you didn't play against too much Storm, but what did you play against a bunch this weekend?
It was Hercule. I faced Hercule. So it was an 8-round tournament. I faced for the last 4 rounds. I faced a Hercule player.
Oh wow! Every round after round 4 was
every
Hercule?
round. I was facing solid players too. I was facing for round 4, I faced I can't pronounce his last name. His first name's Tony. He got 8th in day 2 with Hercule.
Yeah. Tony.
I faced him round.
Creatura.
Yeah.
Probably butchering it. Yeah.
I faced him round 4. He was super cool. But he felt. I think he felt a little overwhelmed with the Vegito. Because even when he Mafu'd me, I just played a second Vegito.
Right.
There was actually a game where I think he Mafu'd me 3 times. I had three Vegitos Mafu'd, and I still managed to come back because Dragon Fist.
Nice.
I faced Ryan Severin, who he was the one who gave me a lot of the tech choices. So my main deck, the 2 Beerus main deck, and the 1 Massane, he convinced me to play it. So big shout outs to him.
Cool.
Gave me a good idea of how to fight the Hercule matchup and stuff like that on our way up there, or to the event, and it really did help out. It gave me kind of the confidence, like, okay, if I face Hercule, which not a lot of people, I didn't expect to face a lot of initially. He's like, if I face Hercule, at least I know I have a game plan going in.
So what is that general game plan?
General game plan is, thankfully my leader swings for 20k. If I actually don't worry about his a Hercule player's board unless it's a 20k or higher, because I'm going to always put pressure on the leader and always swinging. I was told to always swing with 10k more. So because when you swing with 10k more, unless they're using a super combo, they have to sacrifice another card to stay alive, because they'll combo the 10k to get up to 20 if they're awakened. But then they need to ditch either another 10k or a 5k after drawing that replaced the other one to not take the damage.
Right.
So thankfully most of my deck is 20 or higher for really like good battle cards, unless it's Pan where I'm swinging early game where it's still swinging with 10k. Right. 10k more, and my leader will swing with 10k more, and I won't even worry about battle cards, because once I get a Senzu Bean on Vegito, they're going to be dumping cards to try and kill him, and I can dump back or play multiple Vegitos, and they're like, I guess I need to kind of pass turn. Like, there's so many times where I'd be facing a Hercule deck, and you'll have like a board all untapped, maybe swung with one battle card, and then just pass turn, and I'm like, perfect, I'll just swing out with my board, and then that's when I'll start Dragon Fisting like things back that I know that don't summon out. So I would never swing back at Goku or an Oob. I'll leave that on board because I don't want them to get any value off of playing another one.
Right. So it seems like the two walls of the event, at least in my opinion, were Storm on one end. You had to be able to beat Storm, and then on the other end, you had to be able to beat Hercule. So which one was a scarier matchup and why?
Originally, Storm was a scarier matchup. So I play Storm a decent amount against, because I have a friend who lives and dies by that deck.
Yep.
So I used to be playing it a lot, and I complain about Storm consistently. I'm one of those guys where I just hated facing Storm. I'm like, I want to play my big cards, and I can't play my big cards. And then I found a deck that can still do that. It still is tough against Storm, but it's actually a harder matchup because I can't get to my win conditions. Things like, Vegito, things like Dragon Fist, I can't get to these guys fast enough, and that's where it's scarier fighting. But thankfully, I only had one Storm matchup at the event, and that was against Hercule, which I was terrified facing him. I was sitting there, heart beating real fast, because I'm like, oh my god, it's a pro player. I'm gonna freaking lose right now, and I managed to pull through. The Ajirobe put in a lot of work, and Group Pilaf was a definitely good side deck choice to kind of stunt those turns that are early on where they don't have a lot to work with, where the hand sizes are not massive.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I mean, so that wraps up kind of my questions on the deck list. Any final thoughts or things you want to just mention about it, or how the weekend went?
Like I said, the weekend went overall great. I went 6-1-1. My one loss was to a friend of mine, which I was perfectly content with, and my draw was in last round with Danny Nguyen or Danny Win. And I made a post on the big chat earlier, and I want to reiterate a lot of these great players I placed. Ryan Severin, Hercule, Pat O'Neill, Danny Wynn. These are fantastic players and pillars of the community, and I was very happy just to face them, and being able to face and then either tie or win with some of them definitely gave me a decent confidence boost in terms of playing this game, and just facing them I felt like made me a better player. So I was really happy at that event where I felt like all my rounds were pretty solid, and it wasn't like I accidentally made it to top cut. To those top places. It was the deck was built, and it was built well, and I played it well. So
yeah, man, absolutely, definitely a well-deserved top cut, a top 4 for sure. And it's really awesome. I love when players can take like how an event went, like in every aspect, like who you played against, what cards you played, what choices you made, and like just take that and reflect on it. I think that's a really, really good trait to have. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, the last thing I have is I did build this deck to kind of counter the meta, but also tailored to my play style. For anybody who's going to be attempting at a mono blue Goku, the good thing about this deck is you tailor it to you. So I really like Dragon Fist, and I thought Dragon Fist was going to do well, and it did, this deck is tailored for me. So make sure you always adjust it to the way you play, because the best way you're going to play a deck is when it's built for you. Because I have friends that play exact lists from other friends I know. Even just a 1 or 2 card tweak, maybe in side deck, maybe in main board, tweaking it to your preferences can really make all the difference at these events, or even at the local level.
Yeah, I 110% agree. I actually end up doing that a little bit with my team's Hercule list. Any final shout outs you want to give?
Final shout outs. My Rhode Island crew that I generally rock with. I thank you guys for all the hours of playtesting we've been putting in. All the theory crafting, trying to make sure that our decks, all of us are ready for these events. Probably biggest shout out to Ryan Severin for all the advice he gave me on our way to the event. Because he rode in the car with me, and just being able to pick a top player's brain on how they interact with this game and how they interact in these matchups, it really does help a lot. Just knowing stuff like that, and like looking at these people's Patreons and these people's opinions on things, because it really does make a lot of difference with that little bit of knowledge on the how to, not the and the why to, not the what the deck is, because the deck doesn't make the player. The player makes the deck.
Absolutely, 110%. All right, Nick, thank you so much for joining us again. Congratulations again on your top 4.
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. All right, guys, this has been Joey and Nick visiting us here on Crossworld TCG. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time.